Awesome. We are live at our Course in Miracles community study group. Yay! We are going to open off with a little prayer. Feel free to join us. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for teaching us through your word, through your sons, the true meaning of love, the true purpose of time, the true purpose of relationships. Thank you for teaching us how we can get out of the desert, how we can be free from fear, free from guilt, free from the hell we made for ourselves. Thank you. Amen. Let's get into it. Okay, we are picking up where we left off last week at Miracle Principle 27 on page 19. A miracle is a universal blessing from God through me to all my brothers. It is the privilege of the forgiven to forgive. Souls cannot rest until everyone has found salvation. This is great. This is a great one to start off with today. Just grabbing my pen. A miracle is a universal blessing from God. A universal blessing through me to all my brothers, right? So it's a blessing passing from God through you, right? So uh, you are helping God extend this blessing, right? You are essentially a carrier, a distributor, a vessel of the vessel, or the blessing, vessel of the blessing. From God through me to all my brothers. No one's excluded here. It's not a miracle is a universal blessing from God through me to some of my brothers, right? Nobody's excluded. It is the privilege of the forgiven to forgive. And here we're breaking this down and we're really seeing that this has to do with seeing, right? It's the privilege of those who see clearly that they are forgiven, to see clearly that all are forgiven, right? To remind others by seeing them clearly that they are forgiven, right? So we don't even need to remind through words necessarily, right? Because the gift of a miracle can be simply in seeing someone clearly, seeing that they are forgiven, seeing that they are guiltless, right? It is the privilege of the forgiven to forgive. Later in the course, we are also called to recognize it's what we want to do, right? Once you are forgiven, what you want to do is share that with others, right? There's no sense in keeping it for yourself. Souls cannot rest until everyone has found salvation. Until everyone has found salvation. Salvation in the glossary of course terms on page 1942, it says salvation is defined as liberation from the entire separated condition in which we feel alone, afraid, guilty, and cut off from God. Salvation is of the mind through the reversal of our thinking. It is not of the body through purifying the body or forcing it to behave properly. nor is it of the Spirit, which was never lost, and so need not be saved. So salvation here. Oh, for those of you following along, we are reading from A Course in Miracles, complete and annotated edition. Okay. Liberation from the entire separated condition in which we feel alone, afraid, guilty, and cut off from God. Souls cannot rest until everyone has found liberation from the separated condition in which they feel alone, afraid, guilty, or cut off from God. Cool. That makes sense to me. If you're feeling guilty, afraid, cut off from God, you're not resting. Souls cannot rest. And understanding we are one, right? Souls cannot rest until everyone has found salvation, and they will, right? This is not a, oh, we're gonna, the ego almost wants to make it into something where it's like, oh, we have to keep doing this until we get to this final stage, and it's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard, and how do we get everyone on the same page? And we're going to have to convince people, you know. Uh, that's not really the most accurate way of looking at this. It's understanding that everyone will find salvation.
Yeah.
In truth, everyone has found salvation, right? It's just a matter of seeing their salvation clearly, seeing their innocence clearly, right? It is the privilege of the forgiven to forgive. And again, just a reminder, forgiveness is seeing clearly that no forgiveness is necessary, right? Paragraph 2. The disciples were officially and specifically told to heal others as physicians of the Lord. Footnote 47, Matthew 10:5 and 8. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them, saying, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Jesus may also have in mind Mark 16:18. They shall lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. As later on he says, he has already mentioned this verse. Lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. Freely you have received, freely give.
I like that.
That's
I
great.
use that.
That's great.
Yeah.
The disciples were officially and specifically told to heal others as physicians of the Lord. They were also told to heal themselves, and they were promised that I would never leave them or forsake them. Footnote 48, John 14:18. I will not leave you desolate. Hebrews 13:5. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Atonement is the natural profession of the children of God, because they have professed me. Atonement is the natural profession of the children of God. And remember, atonement is the undoing of the belief in separation. Let's find that in the glossary of course terms. Come on. Thank you. Atonement, it's the first one. And it doesn't have a page number. 1933. Atonement. Reconciliation with God through the wiping away of that which seems to separate us from God, our sins. In Christianity, the atonement was achieved through Jesus paying for the sins of mankind in his crucifixion. In the Course, the atonement wipes away our quote unquote sins through our recognition that they were never real in the first place. A principle that Jesus demonstrated in his resurrection, which is referred to as the atonement in terms of an event in the course. Quote, the full awareness of atonement then is the recognition that the separation never occurred. Separation never occurred. So when we're talking about atonement, that's what we're talking about. Atonement is the natural profession of the children of God. The full awareness is the recognition that the separation never occurred, right? And a profession here, the way I see it, right, is you could look at this in kind of a ha-ha way of oh, I'm a professional. Right? It's the natural profession. It is your natural job. It is your natural duty as a child of God. This undoing of the separation, seeing clearly that the separation never happened is your natural profession, right? You can also see this as profession, i.e. profess, right?
Oh, okay.
Right? So it is your natural expression, right? It is your natural profession, the atonement. Because they have professed me. Because they have professed me. This reminds me of a previous, this reminds me of Miracle Principle 22, paragraph 6, right? Where Jesus says, I'm just going to read paragraph 6, right? Because this last line, atonement is the natural profession of the children of God because they have professed me, right? They have professed me reminds me of Principle 22, paragraph 6. The biblical teaching that if you are ashamed of me before men, I will be ashamed of you before God is interpreted as a threat only as long as you remain at the first stage. What it really means is that if you are ashamed of me or embarrassed by love, you will project and therefore make it impossible for me to reach you. Basically, you project this embarrassment of love onto Jesus, right? And pretend to be embarrassed of Jesus, right? So he seems to be embarrassed of you because that's what you're projecting onto him. Make every effort you can not to do this. I will help you as much as you let me. But essentially, this understanding that this is referring to the opposite, right? If you are ashamed of me before men, I will be ashamed of you before God, right? Is interpreted that way. It's interpreted as a threat, as opposed to understanding it's being communicated as a um, to add awareness to our projection, right? The fact that we're projecting our shame of love, right, or our embarrassment of love onto Jesus, and so he seems embarrassed by us. So this is this miracle principle 27. I see this as referring to the opposite, right? Atonement is the natural profession of the children of God because they have professed me, because they are not ashamed of me,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because they are not embarrassed by love, right?
So that's what happens.
So that's what happens is that if you are not, I mean, if you are not embarrassed by love, if you have professed Jesus,
Yeah.
right? Uh, yeah, that's all you want to do. That's all you want to do is seek to undo the separation, the belief in separation from God.
Yeah. Where, so you are ashamed or whatever other words you want to use, and it's like you block.
Yeah, you're blocking your awareness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't actually block love, just a reminder.
Yeah, because we're all love.
Yeah,
Love.
this is for those of you who are just jumping in now. Um, this is something we talk about often. We remind ourselves about this often. You can never actually block love. You can only seem to block your awareness of love. You can't block love itself.
No, God.
Yeah.
Yes, love.
Yeah. It's like you can put a blindfold on and try as hard as you want to. It's not gonna work.
You still are what you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yay. Paragraph 3. The children need both strength and help. Right? You cannot help them until you are strong. The everlasting arms are your strength, and the wisdom of God is your help. Aww. That means that we have everything we need to be strong so that we can help. The children need both strength and help. And this is referring to physical, children in our dream, but also the children of God. The children of God need both strength and help. You cannot help until you are strong. The everlasting arms are your strength, and the wisdom of God is your help. Is your help. Um, we're gonna do a little callback. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Underneath are the everlasting arms. Mm-hmm. Miracle Principle 24, paragraph 2, line 3. This is what the biblical statement underneath are the everlasting arms means. And then footnote 33, Deuteronomy 33:27, the eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. According to the above passage, in the process of correcting our errors, we are supported by God. Our efforts need not be sufficient because He, by way of the atonement, will make up for whatever we cannot accomplish on our own. So this is another reference to the everlasting arms, right? So we're being reminded once again, underneath are the everlasting arms. You always have access to the strength and support that you need. Here's just another reminder. Essentially, on your own, you are not strong. That's what's being said here. You can't do it on your own,
No.
right? It's saying the children need both strength and help. You cannot help until you are strong. And as you are not strong, right? The everlasting arms are your strength. Your strength comes from an outside source. Really, it's an inside source because it is more you than what this is,
Yeah.
right? It is more you than what the body is, right? The everlasting arms are your strength, and the wisdom of God is your help. Footnote 49. Back to Deuteronomy 33:27. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Just always ready to catch you. Like that's how I imagine it. Like a little kid, you're free to jump around and play, and you will just always be perfectly caught. Okay. Paragraph 4. Quote, heaven and earth shall pass away, end quote, means that they will not always exist as separate states. My word, which is the resurrection and the life, shall not pass away, because life is eternal. My word is the resurrection and the life, right? Jesus is not saying that he is the resurrection and the life. He shall not pass away, right? We're not talking about bodies here, right? My word, which is the resurrection and the life, shall not pass away because life is eternal. Footnote 50, Mark 13:31. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. John 11:25. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet he shall live. In the above course passage, rather than Jesus being the resurrection and the life, his word, his teaching is the resurrection and the life.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah.
And if you think about this clearly, right, his teaching, right, the impact of these teachings are literally to bring someone back to life from hell,
Yeah.
right? To bring you back to your true life, your true invulnerable, guiltless existence as a son of God, as a perfect son of God, not a watered down victimhood life of the body, right? Vulnerable body. You are the work of God, and his work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how you must think of yourself in your heart, because this is what you are. This is one of my favorite lines in the whole course. This is one of my favorite lines in the whole course. You are the work of God. His work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. You are nothing but love. You are nothing but lovable. This is how you must think of yourself in your heart, because this is what you are. This is a reversal of, I think, how I think about myself, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Jesus is flipping this around and saying, no, no, no. This is what you are. This is how you should think about yourself. Right? So this is really coming back to the mind training, the pattern of mind training, right? There's a footnote here, 50. Oh, no, 51, 51. Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. The course reverses cause and effect here. Instead of how you think of yourself dictating what you are needs to dictate how you think of yourself. Bless you. Wow, I'm putting a bunch of stars next to it. That's one of my favorite lines. How you are needs to dictate how you think of yourself. This is so clear. This is so clear. And this is what the mind training is all about, right? The mind training is about seeing yourself clearly, right? The more clearly that you can see yourself, more accurately that you're seeing yourself, right? What you are needs to dictate how you think of yourself. Great. Oh, and we're at footnote 52, which is Cameo 7, an experience of revelation. Back to the cameos. We had a good cameo last time, letting him take charge of minutia. And this one is called an experience of revelation. Cameo 7, an experience of revelation. Shortly before Miracle Principle 28, Helen records an important experience that opens up a new topic, revelation. The process that leads her to revelation begins, according to a note in the text, with, quote, experiences at the visionary level, end quote. These experiences inspire Helen to write the following prayer, either to God or to Jesus. Helen says, Lord, I will leave my desire to help him in your hands. If you will tell me what to do, I will to do it. The person she desires to help is Bill. Jesus later says, quote, you asked for something that would help him, end quote, referring to Bill. She ends up turning this desire over to God. Oh, it's okay. You can come here. Hi, sweetie. Hi, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I know that probably woke you up, huh? Sleepy. Too good girl. Oh, cute. She ends up turning this desire over to God in the form of the above prayer, thus making it a purely egoless impulse. Right? Lord, I will leave my desire to help him in your hands. If you will tell me what to do, I will to do it. This is a purely egoless impulse. As it turns out, she writes the final line of the prayer differently than she had consciously intended. A note in the Ur text explains she had not known that the word to was inserted and had merely intended to write, I will do it. This is quite likely an example of what Jesus talks about when he says that some Freudian slips, quote, come from the superconscious, which is in communion with God, end quote. So saying I will do it versus I will to do it, right, has a different connotation. I will to do it is aligning your will with the will of God in this context, right? I will to do it as opposed to I will do it. With this mere slip, with this slip, the mere consent to do what God asks, has now become the unequivocal will to do it. So instead of just consenting to what God asks you to do, you say, I will to do it, right? It's unequivocal will, right? This signifies, in other words, a complete joining of her will with God's. Jesus' response is dramatic. And that, Azra, is the answer. Bedtime, please. Ow. Thank you. Jesus now authoritatively confirms the vital importance of this joining with God's will. In the process, he calls her Azra, as he had earlier in Cameo 3, implying that this union with God's will also signifies stepping into her former identity as a child of light, possibly as the biblical scribe Ezra, the very thing he was calling her to do earlier. This prayer of Helen's is so important that Jesus later calls it, quote, the door that leads her out of the desert forever, end quote, and then intensifies it even further. Jesus says, if you will tell me what to do, only that I will to do. This is from the text, chapter 1, 46. Helen now reports the impact of her prayer and Jesus' confirmation. Helen, the impact of this was incredibly intense, like a great burst of unexpected clarity. It was briefly so compelling that it seemed as though there was nothing else at all. The whole world just disappeared. When it faded out, there was no after effect except a dim sense of wonder, which also faded out, though a trifle slower. I was told to write nothing else that evening, but we'd pick up the course again in the morning. It was also explained that the kind of experience is at the revelation level, which is different than the course's emphasis on miracles, but not by any means out of accord. Helen had experienced what Jesus now calls a revelation. In this context, the term refers not to God revealing techniques or prophecies to us, but to God revealing himself to us. Revelation is the course's term for the wordless, formless experience of union with God, usually called the mystical experience. More specifically, revelation is the introvertive mystical experience, in which all sensory experience is withdrawn. Helen writes, the whole world just disappeared. And the mystic experiences undifferentiated unity with the spiritual ground of being. Oh, and the mystic experiences undifferentiated unity with the spiritual ground of being. Helen's experience of revelation now becomes the catalyst for Jesus' first discussion of this topic, which begins directly after Miracle Principle 28. In the middle of that discussion, Jesus interjects these personal comments about Helen and Bill. Tell Bill that miracles do not depend on revelation, they induce it. He is quite capable of miracles already, but he is still too fearful for revelations. Note that your revelation occurred specifically after you had engaged at the visionary level in a process of denying fear. Then, at the end of the revelation discussion, right before Principle 30, we find these concluding personal remarks. Tell Bill that your propensity for revelation, which is very great, is the result of a high level of past communion. Its transitory nature comes from the descent into fear, which has not yet been overcome. His own, quote, suspended state mitigates against both extremes. This has been very apparent in the course of both of your recent developmental patterns. Miracles are the essential course of action for both of you. Emphasis on action. Miracles are the essential course of action for both of you. They will strengthen him and stabilize you. In the above remarks, Jesus elucidates a core principle. Experiencing revelation requires an absence of fear. He says that, quote, your revelation occurred specifically after you had engaged at the visionary level in a process of denying fear. This refers to the visionary experiences that led to the prayer Helen wrote. And that prayer, as we saw, implies a joining with God's will, which obviously entails a lack of fear of God. I love this part is so fun. And that prayer, as we saw, implies a joining with God's will, which obviously entails a lack of fear of God, right? And we have a sense of, and we'll gain a better understanding of this, right? But we are afraid of revelation because we fear God,
Yes,
right?
judgment.
Yeah, that's
It
what
was
we're
taught.
worried. That's what was taught to us, right? So we push away revelation because we are afraid, right? I mean, literally, to inspire the fear of God in someone is a phrase that we use,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's really quite, it's quite funny looking at this from the non-separate perspective, right? It's all kind of laughable
yeah.
to think that we could be afraid of that thing that is us, that we are one with, right?
And there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Right. But you could see how if someone experienced revelation
Oh, yeah.
when they were afraid of God,
Yeah,
right? It would not be helpful,
yeah,
right? So miracles, we're being taught here that miracles are a way of earning our release from fear. Miracles are the way that we are released from fear, right? Because it is the action step we can take to deny fear, right? It's the actual process of denying fear and teaching ourselves to see clearly, right? Um, So her experience of God apparently came out of a temporary cessation of fear of God. Nice. He then describes Helen's and Bill's respective relationships with revelation. Helen, he says, is unusually open to revelation because of a high level of past communion, possibly as the biblical scribe Ezra. Yet she can only experience it fleetingly because of her descent into fear. In other words, she has the ability to swing from extreme fear all the way to genuine revelation. But the revelation experience is transitory. She inevitably falls back down into her previous state of fear. Bill's condition is quite different. He finds himself suspended between the two extremes. This leaves him in a much more stable state than Helen's, but that state is essentially one of fear, even if not as extreme as Helen's. This means that, for the time being, he is cut off from revelation altogether. The way out of both of their respective problems with revelation is to give miracles to others. This will stabilize Helen, allowing her to eventually stay at the revelation side of the spectrum. And it will strengthen Bill, giving him the security to shed his fear. Miracles, in other words, are for both of them the road past fear and into revelation. Note that the much more personal than usual notes you are taking, Jesus writes. Whoops, sorry. Jesus writes, note that the much more personal than usual notes you are taking today reflect the revelatory experience. This does not produce the more generalizable quality which the course is aimed at. They may nevertheless be of great help to Bill personally, since you asked for something that would help him personally. It depends on how he listens and how well he understands the cooperative nature of this, your first joint experience. You can help only by reading the note first, or reading this note first. Ask him later if this should be included in the written part of the course at all, or whether you should keep these notes separately. He is in charge of these decisions. Revelation, as Jesus says elsewhere, is intensely personal. And so, in the afterglow of that experience, Helen took more personal than usual notes. The drawback of this is that such notes are generally applicable more to Helen than to others, and that it is that very generalizable quality of applying to everyone which the course is aimed at. This elucidates a key editing principle. Material included in the course should be applicable to readers in general, not just to Helen and Bill. This material, quote, may nevertheless be of great help to Bill if Bill understands the cooperative nature of their joint experience. If, in other words, he understands that whatever Helen experiences is relevant for him. Jesus then leaves it in Bill's hands whether this material should be included in the written part of the course at all. Indeed, Jesus here placed Bill in charge of all decisions about what material was meant for the course and what was meant just for them. Unfortunately, there is no evidence that Bill ever truly assumed this role. As we say in Appendix 2, Helen seems to have been the primary editor throughout the various editing processes. As a result, her tendency to exclude material operated throughout, so that with each version, the course became shorter and shorter. Overall, Jesus' comments about Helen's revelation mark the mystical experience as a key theme in the course. Permanent revelation is the ultimate goal toward which the course is leading us. Yet, it is a course in miracles, not in revelation. Miracles are the essential course of action for all of us, for those with a high propensity for revelation and for those not yet ready for revelation. Miracles are what will lead us beyond fear, and going past fear is the only way to enter and at last permanently abide in revelation, the state in which God reveals himself to us in direct union. Cool. That's so fun. Nice. I think we read cameo number 8 now too. Yeah. Hold on, let me see. No, we'll do it later. Comes up later. Great. Cool. Okay, now we are at Miracle Principle 28. We're back on page 20. Miracles are a means of organizing different levels of awareness. Awesome. So we already talked about different levels being like the spiritual level and the physical level, right? Here we're talking about different levels of awareness. It's a little bit different. And miracles are a tool. Miracles are like a shelving unit. They are a means for organizing the different levels of awareness, right? Miracles come from the below conscious or subconscious level. Revelations come from the above conscious or superconscious level. The conscious level is in between and reacts to either subconscious or superconscious impulses in varying ratios. Awesome. The conscious level is in between, right? And it is only reacting to the information it's getting. And it's either getting information from the subconscious or the below conscious level, or the above conscious, the superconscious level, right? Miracles come from the subconscious, revelations come from the superconscious. Freud was right about this basic classification, but wrong about the names. He was also right that the content of consciousness is fleeting. Consciousness is the level which engages in the world and is capable of responding to both external and internal impulses, having no impulses from itself and being primarily a mechanism for inducing response. It can be very wrong, right? Let's swing back a little bit. Freud was right about this basic classification, subconscious or superconscious, but wrong about the names. 53. In other words, Freud was right that the conscious level is reacting to impulses from above and below, but he was wrong in naming the levels superego, ego, and id. The levels are more properly called superconscious, conscious, and subconscious. Cool. Thanks, Jesus. He's reteaching us psychology. Which honestly I love. I love this in particular because nowadays many of us have some, like, just because of media in today's day and age and what the internet teaches us and all of these things, many of us have some understanding of psychology, far more than even a decade ago, 2 decades ago, right? So I find that a lot of this is very helpful, right? Okay. Consciousness is the level which engages in the world. It's capable of responding to both external and internal impulses. The emphasis here is that it has no impulse from itself, right? So you're not actually doing anything consciously, right? Your conscious state, right, of existing in the world is not actually um, choosing to do anything. The impulses are coming from your subconscious or superconscious. So your conscious state in the world is just a reaction mechanism or a response mechanism. Because of this, it can be very wrong, right? Because it's basically like a live wire ready to respond to whatever comes up. That's all it can do is respond, right? And so depending on the input that is provided to it, right? It's going to just respond. It has no impulses on its own. So in this way, it can be very wrong, right? Your response is, this mechanism for inducing response, right? If someone pulls the trigger and induces the response isn't necessarily going to be the right one, right? The conscious state cannot kind of actually think of things, decide things, anything like that. It has no impulses on its own. Isn't that interesting?
That is, yeah, very interesting.
And then we get to footnote 54 on page 21. This paragraph introduces a view of the mind that is taught in the first 4 chapters of the text. In this view, the mind has 3 levels, with the conscious level sandwiched in between the superconscious or heavenly level and the subconscious level. The subconscious level is then itself divided into 2 layers: a superficial layer filled with the impulses of the world, and a deeper layer filled with the impulse to miracles. Nice. So this is, I find this helpful to do a little doodle. Do you want to come closer so you can see my doodle?
Sure.
So we have the conscious level, super, and then subconscious. And this subconscious level is broken into two categories, right? We have what was it, superficial and the miracles. Here we go. So you have your conscious level in the middle. Super conscious is the heavenly level, right? And then your subconscious has two layers. It has a more superficial layer that we fill with
Okay. Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
Our deeper subconscious layer, right? What is more natural to us than the superficial layer that we fill with whatever blah 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 is miracles, is extending love, right? Seeing each other clearly.
Hmm.
But we fill this superficial layer and then you can't really get to the miracles underneath it. They seem very far away,
Wow.
right? And again, if this superficial layer is occupying our conscious, is constantly triggering our conscious state, right? As opposed to when you don't really care about the superficial layer of the subconscious and what that is filled with, right? The miracle impulses, your true subconscious, your natural subconscious triggers your conscious state, right?
Hmm.
And that is where you're able to truly relate with others because you're not distracted, you're not filled with, your subconscious is not filled with kind of your whims of the body, whims of the world,
Yeah.
right? Which then would trigger your conscious state, which is just reacting
Yeah.
to whatever impulses you feed it.
Okay.
So you can feed it from the superficial level, or you can feed it from your true subconscious level, which is the impulse for miracles.
Wow.
Is that interesting?
And then the super conscious is by asking, and you get revelations.
You don't ask for revelations, you simply decrease your fear.
Oh, and then
You need to be, yeah, you need to be free from fear,
huh.
right?
All right.
There we go. I don't know if you guys can see this or if it's totally in reverse for you, but maybe it will help. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, we'll learn more about revelations as we continue. But again, revelations are not the goal of the course, right? The purpose of the course is miracles. Great. Okay, we're up at paragraph 3. For example, if the identification is with the body, consciousness may distort superconscious impulses by denying their source and seeking their impact in the orgasm. So this is understanding, again, because our conscious state is only responding and reacting to things, right? If we are having a superconscious or a revelatory impulse, right? Our conscious state in reaction, if we are totally body identified, right? If identification is with the body, consciousness, right, that middle state that is only responding and only reacting, may distort this heavenly or this spiritual impulse and deny its source, deny that it is coming from the superconscious, and seek the impact of this revelatory impulse in the orgasm, in the right? In the good feeling of the body,
Yeah.
right? This is the result of, quote, mistaken identity. If you will look at the effects of revelation, you will see that there are some similarities in the experiential results, but hardly in the content. This is saying that if you look at the effects of revelation and the effects of, right? Um, oh, I see. If you look at the effects of revelation, you will see that there are some similarities in the experiential results between an orgasm and a revelation. For example, oftentimes during an orgasm, people say it's like the whole world disappears and you're just totally in that moment and totally in love or in bliss, right? Uh, and Jesus is clarifying there are some similarities in the experiential results, right? But hardly in the content. What they're actually made of is very different, right? One requires a body and one requires you to see that there is an absence of a body, to be fearless of the absence of the body. This is footnote 55. This originally began, quote, if you will look back at the description of the effects of revelation, end quote. This seems to refer to Helen's original description of her revelation. Quote, the impact of this was incredibly intense, like a great burst of unexpected clarity. It was briefly so compelling that it seemed as though there were nothing else at all. The whole world just disappeared. End quote. Nice. Cool. Mistaken identity. Revelations induce complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. They represent the original form of communication between God and his sons before the intrusion of fire and ice made this impossible. Revelations, not revolutions. Revelations induce complete but temporary suspension of doubt and fear. It is required. This suspension, this complete suspension of doubt and fear is required to witness God, right? If there is any fear or any doubt, you will not see him. You will be blocking your vision to him, right? Revelations represent the original form of communication between God and his sons before the intrusion of fire and ice made this impossible. Footnote 56. This appears to be a reference to the 1920 Robert Frost poem, quote, Fire and Ice, which, on a literal level, speculates on whether the world will end through burning or freezing. However, the poem identifies fire with desire and ice with hate, and is therefore really about the destructive power of desire and hate. This dovetails nicely with the reference in here. Fire and ice seemingly destroyed our original world, a spiritual realm characterized by perfect communion with God. So if we look at this again, back to paragraph 4, sentence 2, they represent the original form of communication between God and his sons before the intrusion of hate and desire made this impossible. Before the intrusion of the ego, before the intrusion of the separation, right? Because desire and hate only existed with the illusion of the separation. It should be noted that they involve an extremely personal sense of closeness to creation. This is Revelations. Revelations involve an extremely personal sense of closeness to creation, which human beings try to find in sexual relationships. Closeness to creation. This confusion is responsible for the depression and fear which are often associated with sex. This confusion, right? You think you're getting one thing, you think you're getting that sense of closeness, right? That sense of revelation, right? And then you totally get the opposite, right? You uh if you're seeking for connection in the body, you are going to be very disappointed. It will never give you what you are looking for. It will never, like the act of sex will never bring you closer to another person, you know. Ext yeah. Extremely personal sense of closeness to creation. I think at one point I had read this and understood that to creation is understanding not only the not only to try and be in unity with creation on a physical level, right? Like you are creation, right? I am creation. So if we were to be together in that way, it would be like as close as we could get to creation, right? Like humping a tree, you know? Um, but also it's our imagined way, right? Like when we are kind of in a mindset of body identification, it's our imagined way of creating. Is like, oh, I can create another body, right? As opposed to seeing clearly that we are creating everything, right? We are creating our whole existence. This confusion is responsible for the depression and fear which are often associated with sex. Isn't that so funny that we associate depression and fear with sex?
Yeah, this is interesting.
But it's true. I mean, you really think about it. You think you're going to get something out of this, and it never happens. And you seek it out and you try again, and it still doesn't give you what you really want out of it. And you don't even know what you really want it to give you, right? And maybe it temporarily gives you what you want, and then you get a watered down version of it, you know? This reminds me of the previous principle. Two, 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 two. Yeah. A miracle reawakens oh, this is Miracle Principle 21 on page 12. All depression, we're on paragraph 3, sentence 6. All depression and all fear and embarrassment stem from this confusion, confusing the levels, confusing the spirit level and the body level. This is where all depression and all fear and embarrassment come from. You cannot come to communion on the level of the body, right? So we're confused. It's a confusion of the levels, right? To think that you can come into communion on the level of the body. So then going back to Miracle Principle 28 on page 21, it says of this confusion of orgasm and revelation, right, is responsible for the depression and fear which are often associated with sex. Because we're confusing the levels, right? Confusing the levels. That's it for today. We'll continue. We'll continue reading Miracle Principle 28 next time. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. We're here at the Main Street Museum in White River Junction, Undefined Wellness, right below the Main Street Museum, at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays for a spiritual conversation, and 6 o'clock on Thursdays for A Course in Miracles study group read through. Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.